Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. This is The Next Reel, everybody. I'm Pete Wright, and that there is Andy Nelson.
Hey, hey, hey.
And we spoil movies. Tonight on the show, this is the end. J. Lee Thompson takes us to see how Caesar reigns in battle for the planet of the apes.
No, Pete, no!
We want guns!
Now, the final chapter in the incredible ape saga.
There it is, or was.
This is the hell my forefathers used to speak about.
This background radiation alone will give us 300 Röntgens an hour.
The battlefield, a dead city 12 years after the ultimate bomb has been dropped. The prize, the right to inherit what's left of the earth. The contestants, ape against man. The most unbelievable showdown ever filmed. As the mutants, strange, transformed men who live underground like moles, battle the apes to decide who will be master and who will be slave.
Ape shall not kill ape, Andy. Oh.
I don't think you should make those noises ever again.
Andy, tell me that's not the height of your criticism of this movie. Here's what I expect. Pete, you just didn't connect with it. And So, if you can't connect with some of those elements, you're just not going to like the movie. Maybe it just was too challenging.
Too challenging. Yes, there's 2001 and
Battle for the
close
Planet
proximity. Battle for the Planet of the Apes. Right up there, neck and neck.
I have to tell you, as with the Ape series, I still have fun with it, but this is definitely a letdown after the last two for me.
And me.
Oh, good. I stand relieved, sir.
Yeah, this film, it's never been close to my favorites of the bunch. In fact, I think I would say that this is my least favorite of these original five. I always find it lacking. I feel the characters, while some of the characters in the previous films were fairly one note, I find that the ones here just end up being just so much worse, and it's a very frustrating story. I think largely my problem is that the story here just feels like they didn't know what they were doing. We'll talk about the writing, I'm sure, but I feel like this just feels like it's in the hands of people other than the core group who had been handling it so far.
Yeah, even with the dulcet tones of John Huston opening it as the lawgiver, you think if you're in John Huston's hands, maybe something will come out of it.
Yeah, it was an odd choice to kind of bring him on board in that cameo, opening and closing the movie of the lawgiver. I don't know if it really does much other than really lend us his voice, which does have a great tone. And in the sense of the character, the lawgiver, I can see why they would pick him because he does have a great voice. You don't need to know who it is to recognize it. And in that sense, I guess I would say I like him in that role. It's weird that he's there because largely the first 5 minutes of the film, when he's introing it, it's like weird flashbacks. These movies were coming out back to back, like 1 year after the other. Why do we need to spend 5 minutes recapping the past few films? It just seemed silly to me.
Yeah, we didn't. That was nonsense. And I mean, it feels like, because we just watched it last week, that they came out 6 months apart. But the thing that I found so jarring is that we get that 5 minutes of recap and we're in this space of being 12 years in the future after a massive cataclysm, right? After an apocalypse where the humans end up setting off the bomb. So here we go. There's another narrative here about the bomb-loving humans, and we're going to have to go back to that trope, which, to me wasn't as successful in the second movie, but that's certainly where they really hung their hat. And here it's sort of shoehorned in to give us this separation of humans and apes. But in the context of it, then we also have this sort of new civilization political discussion about Caesar and Aldo and living with the humans, and it just feels like they had an idea, they had a direction, and an intent for the film, and they squandered it. They squandered their lead on the last lap after the last two movies. And I know we stand largely alone. I feel like, as people who enjoyed those last two movies, the reviews that are coming in from our friends on Discord, I think, are lower than ours in general.
Yeah, although, yeah. Yeah,
but I stand by those.
Absolutely.
I stand by those. I think this one, that was like, I feel like those movies, actually, we know that they retconned the Apes universe in order to get us back on track. But once they got on track with Escape from Planet of the Apes, they gave us a set of two films of the three that actually put us on a trajectory for something interesting. And this third one that came off the rails.
This is the one where I was really glad to see in Rise of the Planet of the Apes and War for the Planet of the Apes, where they kind of went back and did this story in a much stronger way. I never felt like the Planet of the Apes franchise needed to be remade. Again, Tim Burton's remake is my least favorite of all the
that
9
demonstrated
films.
That point. Yeah.
But the reimagining and kind of the looking at it with a kind of a different prism as we saw in the most recent trilogy, I did really enjoy those. And I enjoyed the elements that they pulled out of conquest and battle. And largely, I feel like they had such a better handle on the way to tell that story and craft it. And that's why I think that those films stand up. Even if I ended up having more of a problem with War for the Planet of the Apes than the previous two, I still felt like they were doing great stuff with the story, and definitely better than what was presented here, because it's not really a battle for the Planet of the Apes. I understand there were budget cuts and stuff, but again, it just goes back to the script. And yes, there are rushing sequels trying to get these things out, but then bring on good writers. And, we talked about, I'm just going to jump into the Carringtons now.
Yeah,
we talked about the Carringtons, John William Corrington and Joyce Hooper Corrington, back when we talked about the Omega Man. And the fact that they were kind of, educators who had kind of come into the world of writing and screenwriting. And they largely had been doing things that were more TV related and were more serious. I mean, they ended up spending a lot of, I think, the 80s working in soap operas, and they it just never felt. I know that Joyce was I think she was a chemist, and so somehow that seemed to work as far as hiring them to write the Omega Man, because it was a disease that wiped out most of the people. But that script had a lot of problems, and they were brought on to write this film after Paul Dane, who had started working on it, had to pull out because of health issues. They were brought on to write this because Omega Man was a hit, and even though they're just not sci-fi writers, and I really feel that the lack of understanding of this world of these Apes films. And they said that they hadn't even seen any of the Apes films before they were hired to write this stinking script.
Yeah.
They just had no idea what they were doing. And I think they were probably given a title and they said, here, go write this movie. And I know Paul actually, he came on to do some, he couldn't do the rewrites, but he polished the script after they had written it. And then he complained to the WGA and tried to get his name on it as a co-writer, because he says he rewrote 90% of the dialogue, changed the ending, but the WGA didn't give him that credit. They only gave him the story by credit. And I mean, I'd say maybe that's for the best, because the structure that they had with this script was pretty poor. And I fault the Corringtons largely for the problems I have with the film.
All right, so let's start in with those problems. Can we? I'd like to start with Aldo, because we've been talking a little bit about Aldo,
right? And
now we have Aldo.
We have our Aldo.
We have our Aldo. This is General Aldo, and he is played by Claude Akins. What did you think of our ultimate portrayal of the oft-mentioned Aldo?
Well, obviously, it's not the Aldo from the previous storytelling that Cornelius did, where Aldo was the first one who said no. In this case, Aldo is a gorilla who just never seems bright. He seems like he's playing it to be stupid. And I don't know if that was the direction he was given by Thompson, like play it like you're a dumb gorilla, or if they're trying to say something about kind of the mentality of the militaristic minded people, or really what. I couldn't figure out why Aldo always just seemed so dumb. But I mean, every time he would talk, he just sounded like he was the dumb one. And it was frustrating. And they basically turned it into something where Aldo is trying to take power from Caesar and become the leader, because he doesn't like the humans. He wants to lock them all up, and he wants to basically kill them all. And he really wants the Planet of the Apes. He doesn't want this idyllic world that Caesar is creating.
Now, I just want to be clear that this is, I mean, we haven't been introduced to another Aldo. This is the same Aldo, but retconned by time traveling.
There was an Aldo in the last film, played by a different actor, David Chow.
Yeah.
But we never it was never clear who that was. Yeah, so theoretically, it's a totally different character.
Okay, that is a retcon hole. Would you agree? This is a failing of.
I don't know if it's a retcon hole, only because they put the time traveling thing messes it all up. Anyway.
It messes it all up, right? Yeah. But it's confusing because we have him playing. We have Aldo as two different species across two different movies with the same name. That is bound to confuse things.
Yeah, but again, in the last film, they name a character Aldo, but they never. You never are identified with which one Aldo is.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, anyhow, so Aldo, this is one of those strange movies. I want to go back to a comment that we made when we were talking about Beneath the Planet of the Apes, when we had the masks of the apes that weren't as good in the thing. I think this was one of those where I could not stand looking at Aldo. I felt like I could, like his mask was melting off of his face.
Yeah.
The entire time. It was very hard to kind of buy into the character. Certainly, I didn't have that problem again this time with with Caesar, who I thought looked again terrific. But goodness, as our primary antagonist here, or gorilla antagonist, it was a real shame not to have a character that I felt like I could buy into. Yeah,
he really is not on par with like the General Ursus. Right, from Beneath. I felt that gorilla had more weight. And I don't know if it's just James Gregory working the mask under it as opposed to Claude Akins.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one, it never looked as good.
I needed to see Aldo in order to see what you were talking about with Ursus. Ursus is much better now.
Yeah.
He also can't quite climb trees. Which is, the ultimate end for poor Aldo. He climbs a tree, and as a gorilla, I kind of expect them to be savvier on trees. And
I've seen Tarzan, man. I know what they can do.
You know what they can do. This is what I'm saying. We know what they can do, and this movie did not even attempt to give us any of that.
Well, not only that, but Cornelius, the son, has a lot of issues with the trees as well. And it's funny because he's actually a spry little gymnast when he's sneaking over to the gorilla camp to spy on them. Right. But as soon as they discover him, it's like he cannot figure out what to do. And,
right. Zoinks.
It's sad. He's just like, oh no, they're cutting my branch. It's like, why don't you jump to another branch and swing off of it like you did before?
Yeah.
It's, yeah. I mean, and I understand he might be scared and not thinking straight, but, I just had a hard time buying that.
A couple of the characters. Here's another one that we need to at least get out of the way, and that is Culp. Culp is back.
Governor Culp.
Yes, he has inherited the rest of humanity on the death of Governor Breck. So he's back. Now, we knew Culp from the last movie. He, he's the one who initially captured Caesar. And he was not a great guy. Now he's living underground, and he leads the remaining humans. And now these are the humans who have survived the nuclear blast, and they're planning their resurgence. What did you think of him as a leader in this movie?
I think he's terrible. I had a hard time, there's a one-sidedness to the governor in the previous film. But I ended up liking him because I felt that he carried himself in a way that was more fitting for kind of an over the top type of film. He really just chewed the scenery and had a lot of fun with it, and I really ended up enjoying him quite a bit. Culp, I don't know if I'm blaming him or again the writers, but he was just flat the whole time, and he's just so I have a harder time buying his one-sidedness and his idiocy with his decisions because I just find him so much less interesting, and it's frustrating. I think I'd have an easier time buying into it if I felt that there was some stronger writing involving his character.
His character and the character of all the humans, a general sort of character of the remaining humans, was so empty for me, right? I just felt like I couldn't tell what they were going for. Are they the sort of remaining zombie hordes? Are they the uprising militaristic last remnants of humanity? I mean, we have a little bit of all of that, but not enough of any one sort of identity of what's left of the humans to make them interesting at all, to make their intentions interesting beyond just, him being that one-trick pony, maniacal, underground, melty-faced leader.
Well, and that's another part of it that's frustrating with the way that the script was written, because Mendez says, if you shoot them, you're going to break 12 years of peace. And we know this is, I can't remember, like 20 years later, right?
Yeah, it was
and
like 12, right? Wasn't it like 12 years later?
Was it 12?
Yeah.
Well, okay. For some reason, I was thinking it was 20 years later.
Or maybe it's 20. You keep talking. I'm going to check the script.
Yeah. Well, anyway, 12 years of peace. So I just felt like, okay, so it's not peace really, because one, the apes don't know these people exist, so that doesn't make it peace just because, you're living in hiding, right?
Yeah.
And also that's also saying that the apes knew of their existence 12 years ago, and because the apes really seem surprised that people are here. It's a strange thing to kind of say, and the way that the story is structured with that, like these people have been just, they're trying to survive, but they're not doing anything. They're not exploring. They're just living underground and suffering and melting away in radioactive misery. At least in, other sorts of post-apocalyptic films, you have either people are living in a community that's succeeding and they're trying to prevent other people from getting into it, or they're living in kind of a society that's falling apart, and they are sending people out in different directions, trying to find alternatives. These guys are living in in misery, but they're not doing anything about it. It's terrible. And apparently it's like, a couple hour trek through the desert to get to this ape wonderland that they find. So obviously it's 12 years. They've been doing a terrible job of trying to save themselves.
IMDb says 10 years.
Let's see.
Yeah. I just, that's a singular point here. I've never bought, I was never able to buy into that angle of those characters. And so as soon as they go underground, when Virgil and Caesar and MacDonald go underground to see what's going on in New York again, and they're wandering through the tunnels and sewers and whatever, and here we have Colt saying, don't bring him to me, just shoot him on sight here, just get it done, don't bring him back. It seemed like such an empty, I don't want to say non-threatening. Obviously, they were threatened, but I certainly didn't care. And I didn't see what the humans were going to get out of it in terms of their transformation into whatever they were going to become at the end of the movie. There was just no interest there.
Yeah, right.
Well, and there was that very weird sequence as right after they make that call, right after Colt makes that call over the loudspeaker that apparently not everybody can hear. We have the three of our heroes sneaking down the curb, and there's this really sort of opportunistically haunting sequence where you have all these faces of the humans kind of waking up. I couldn't tell where they were. It felt like they were in some sort of a ward, like a hospital ward or something. This was all they could. They just were piling up the poisoned humanity on these giant shelves, but then they all wake up at the same time and suddenly they're not poisoned at all. I just, those kinds of twists did not play well for building intensity. They just built confusion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know some of those people, like as they're making the trek across the desert, some of them keel over and die, at least in the unrated or the extended cut. You see some people kind of passing out or dying and left behind. So you get a sense that they're sick, but it's not done in a very clear way. And also the whole idea, okay, so if Conquest was 91, just say it is 12 years, or 12 to 20, that would put it at 2003 to 2011, somewhere in that window of time this is taking place. And sometime before that, there had been some nuclear war that had destroyed the city and kind of devastated, left kind of this radioactive waste. But clearly not everywhere, because the apes obviously haven't been affected. And so it's a story storytelling device that they kind of created in here to have this radioactive city, just, I think, largely so they could create the underground population that would become the underground dwellers later in Beneath. And we have Mendez here for his, he's going to be creating the Temple of Mendez or whatever it's called by the time we get to Beneath. But it's I don't know. It just seemed so shoehorned in to have, not only do we have apes taking over the planet, but we also had to throw in a nuclear war to kill off most of the humans or something like that.
There's just no weight to it compared to the other movies. I know. The other movies may not have had all that much weight either, but comparatively.
Comparatively,
yeah,
more weight than this one.
Do you want to talk a little bit about MacDonald the brother?
I really wanted to see MacDonald come back from the previous film, and it's a little disappointing that it ends up being, his brother is here. It's MacDonald's brother.
That's exactly what it felt like.
Right. It just, it's frustrating, and but it's one of those things. It's the world of sequels when they weren't Marvel and they couldn't get every single person back to be in every film that they wanted them in.
In this case, I was actually relieved to hear that, in fact, Harry Rhodes wanted to come back but was unavailable. Like, that somehow makes it better.
It does, actually. It does.
Yeah. All right.
What was he doing?
That I don't know.
I'm going to look right now.
I don't know, but you should look right now. But that's why they ended up with Austin Stoker. And I think Austin Stoker did fine, but we just don't get that through line, that sense of continuity. And I think Harry Rhodes was one of the most interesting characters in the last film. And so it is less rewarding to have, to try to build up any of that narrative weight on the back of the brother when, the guy we really want to hear from isn't available.
Yeah. Harry Rhodes had a very busy 1973. He was in a TV movie, Trouble Comes to Town. Actually, 2 TV movies. Another one called A Dream for Christmas. He was in an episode of the FBI TV series, and he did another movie called Detroit 9000.
Oh, well, maybe that was it.
So you can see why he didn't end up popping up in this one.
Maybe we should add that to a series. I'll bet we'd like it better.
Detroit 9000, I just love the title. It's the murder capital of the world and the biggest black ripoff of the decade. It's going to get solved or the town's going to explode.
Richard Klein is DP on this one. We have talked about Richard Klein in the past, certainly for Andromeda Strain. This film comes, he'd been acting as DP for probably 15 years or so. A lot of television, a handful of features before his career really took off, but he is certainly behind a lot of sort of comic action films, and one of your favorites, The Man with One Red Shoe, I know is a tough one. Deal of the Century, I know, is high on your list. But Howard the Duck, I know
we
you
talked
celebrate
about him in Star
one.
Trek the Motion Picture too.
We did. That's right.
Yeah.
See, there you go. Star Trek the Motion Picture. So what is it about this one that makes the filmmaking a challenge?
This one, they went back to film out at the Fox Movie Ranch, and I think because they just needed a more desolate sort of look. I feel like it never felt like they were able to achieve anything in the light because of the budget that the last one was able to achieve in the dark. Because they were forced to because of the budget. The last film, they were able to disguise everything and actually made it look so much better. Whereas this film, you're just like in a little, a small little enclave of apes. And I don't have a good sense that it's going to be a planet of apes. I don't have a good sense that there's a planet of people living under New York City. It's very easy to find the group. They walk in, it's like, oh, this is where we are. We've just got a couple blocks to go. It just was awfully convenient. And I don't know. I think the cinematography, I don't know if his work was up to par for something that was just so low budget. And he also had a busy year. I mean, he shot Soylent Green this year, The Herod Experiment, and The Dawn is Dead. So he had a lot of stuff going on in 1973. So this one just doesn't feel like there's anything special with the camera work. Except I will say, there to a certain extent, some of the camera work, mostly the editing during the battle sequence, actually stood out to me as, wow, they actually did a pretty decent job with that part for the film.
I think this goes back to setting expectations poorly for the film. Because the battle scene was fine, but as you said, it certainly doesn't feel like a battle for any sort of planet.
No.
Yeah. Right. It's a skirmish for the village of the apes.
I think it should be retitled Skirmish for the Village of the Apes.
I think there is promise in that movie, at least in terms of truth in advertising.
Absolutely.
And so I totally get it, but I think that so many of the holes in the writing, so many of the opportunities for at least setting up a universe, even if they do it through words and broken radio signals, that there is some other sense of a battle going on elsewhere, would have lended credibility to the skirmish at the end.
Yeah, and I mean, you can argue the same thing with something like War for the Planet of the Apes, because you're just following the one group of Caesar and his clan as they take on Woody Harrelson and his group of soldiers. But I did have a better sense in that film that Woody felt like he was the last defense before the planet was taken over by the apes. So at least I had a little better sense of it. But yeah, in this particular film, it never feels like Culp is even thinking about that, and maybe that's why I like the previous governor so much better, because he really screamed a lot about this whole, we're the last stand before this becomes truly a planet of apes.
Yes.
It actually felt like there was a lot more credibility to everything with him rather than here.
Well, because he was an ideologue, right? And we know ideologues. And I wasn't as crazy about it. But again, by comparison, I would much rather have Breck, spouting ideology than what we get with Culp, who is simply, selfish. It's like there's no texture to that.
Yeah, no, not at all. And just somebody who doesn't even make decisions that make sense. When he's talking to Mendez and they're trying to figure out a plan. I mean, let's just do it. Let's go. Let's kill him. Just kill him. Okay. It's like they weren't going to kill him. And then he's just like, oh, just kill him. And it's like, where did his logic just come from? Like, and I'm like, are they trying to say he's more affected by the radiation perhaps? And so he's not making decisions that are logical because of that. But if that's the case, they really didn't paint that well. And it was a problem.
So this is another one where we have two separate cuts. We have the extended version, which was, I don't know, when was that released?
It was, I think, released originally. It's one of those variations of a cut that is released for TV, where they added a few scenes here and a few scenes there. But then I was looking and I found a site that talked about, there's a Japanese edit and there were these different edits. So it sounds like there was the theatrical cut and they had trimmed a lot of stuff out to get it just under an hour and a half. And the whole idea of these additional scenes, they just felt, we don't really need them. Let's cut them out. And so they did, and then they were added in piece by piece for television cuts here and there. But it's interesting because other than largely the stuff about the missile, which I find really interesting, that the Alpha Omega bomb is in here and that we actually have a number of scenes very specifically dealing with that. And additional battle stuff. A lot of it is just little cuts here and little cuts there. Like, it really was just kind of thinning it out. And but I watching the extended cut, I feel that it's just, there's more to it, and I appreciate the bits that are there.
So I watched the theatrical cut. I think that was what was available in the iTunes set. That's what I ended up with. Obviously didn't like it all that much.
I don't think it's changing that much. It's, so you didn't see any of the stuff with Mendez and the bomb.
No, I didn't see any of that. And it's been so long since I've seen it. I did feel shortchanged without the bomb, because I remember the bomb being in there. That was I felt like that was a piece that was important to the film. So when it wasn't there, I thought something screwed up. Maybe my download screwed up and it, left out a file. Because I thought that was missing. And so that part was frustrating. But no, I didn't get any of the other stuff. I did not get that 355 more seconds of the battle were cut, which is my favorite note on the extended edition.
Right. It's hilarious. I wouldn't say it's missing anything critical other than the bits with the Alpha Omega bomb. There are a lot of interesting bits throughout, but I don't think it's necessary to be there. It's funny because this film is really a sequel to the theatrical cut of Conquest. And if you watch the unrated cut of Conquest, which ends with Caesar being just very vehement about, we're going to take over you humans, and it's really a dark ending. And then you come into this film where apes and humans are living side by side, and Lisa, Caesar's wife, says, you were talking about living in harmony with the humans and all of this sort of stuff. It's very jarring because the two films actually don't line up, and that is a downside to that unrated cut of Conquest leading into this. They just don't fit quite as well. But what are you going to do? That's what happens when you have these variants of the edits.
Yeah, and even more interesting, if you had gone with the theatrical cut, then there is an argument to be made that Breck should have come back.
Yeah, right, because he wasn't killed.
He wasn't killed, yeah. So let's get back into Caesar's plan then, and the end of the film, because the end we have, we have the big everybody play dead scene, we corralling the humans, we have, and it leads us back to John Huston. What do you think of how the film ended?
Going back to the Corringtons and their terrible writing, it's a really frustrating end of the film. This was their plan. They're getting attacked, and then they decide, let's all play dead. The humans will come in. Culp and his army will ride on in. They'll find Caesar, who's not quite dead. They'll have a good old conversation with him, and then Caesar will give the cry, and all the apes will jump up and kill all the humans. This is a terrible plan. It's like, what happens
like
if
charm?
They walk in and hey, here's Caesar, let's put a bullet through his head, and they just shoot him. I mean, it's just dumb, and it's kind of frustrating that that's kind of what they came up with to end this whole thing, because it really needed something stronger than that.
Do you think this is a result of any of Dane's polishing?
From what I read, the original script that the Corringtons wrote, it actually, I think that this was all part of the script that they had written still. The way that I read it is their ending that was changed comes when we go back to the lawgiver, because their script ends on a playground with ape and human children fighting. That was kind of the way that it ended. And when we go to the lawgiver, we see there are apes and human children all listening to the lawgiver, and they're play fighting a little bit. And then we go over to the statue of Caesar, and there's a tear falling from his eye. And I think that is pretty absurd. And what's funny about that is actually Joyce Corrington, she said it was stupid. She said it turned our stomachs when we saw it, and which I think is pretty funny. But I will say I kind of agree with her. It's really dumb. Why is this the ending of the franchise as they knew it at the time?
Well, yes, they missed. That is a great point. The ending to the franchise, totally. But if you look at what he's saying, and I don't mean to say "but" there, that seems like I'm apologizing for it. If you look at what the lawgiver is saying there, right, we're talking about it's sort of a prayer to the future, right? Someday we won't need these weapons, and on the tier we have this sort of, I don't remember what the exact line is, but we have this sort of prayer that says, we still need our weapons now, and it's been 600 years, and that's when we get the sense that he's crying, that the statue is crying. So I feel like I get what the intention was with that production design choice to put that tier there. I also think it was silly and way too heavy-handed for that moment at the end of this particular series.
Yeah, it really is.
I just get how somebody could make the case.
I mean, yes, I can see the point to a certain extent.
Devil's advocate,
Yes.
That's the drill. The cast, we have Roddy McDowall back as Caesar. He looks great, and even if he's not all that compelling of Caesar, dare I twist the word there? I don't know if you heard that. I didn't feel like he was anything more than a village governor himself, and awfully wishy-washy.
And he doesn't seem like he's ever really doing much leading. Like the leading that he does, one, there's a lot of off-screen rules that apparently he made, and then his policies are kind of like, yes, no leaving, no going to the city or whatever it is, unless Caesar says so, but Caesar can do it. I'm like, God, this is like Animal Farm here.
Exactly. That's a great comparison, actually.
Yeah, he can do whatever he wants, but you better listen to him otherwise.
Yeah.
Disappointed with him. Honestly, him and Natalie Trundy as the two returning, they're fine. They're pulling their weight as the characters who've returned, but I just don't feel like there's the strength in really any of the characters.
Well, they give us the big ending, right? I mean, they give us the big ape shall not kill ape sequence, which I find very strange. I guess it's a pivot. I guess it's a sort of a cultural statement on, and we get to learn that it's a cultural statement when McDonald says, I guess they just joined the human race, like that line that's supposed to have so much weight to it when the apes realize that it turns out apes can do bad things to other apes. And we get the tree climbing thing. I thought the pacing and the cutting of that sequence as we get, Caesar trying to express his emotions through that mask, and Lisa saying, joining the chant, everybody else sort of grunting, which seemed to regress them in their development, right? The rest of the apes. And that's one of the things I felt was a little bit of a yo-yo about this movie, that I couldn't make sense of how far along these apes had come. It felt like some of them were back into kind of pre-conquest days where they just, they hadn't learned to make hospital corners on their beds yet, or to serve water and wash their hands. And they were speaking, in much less than 10 years post the last film. So I thought that was a little bit, it sort of cheapened that last moment.
It really did. And it just made it frustrating to have it devolve into that. And like you said, the editing was so kind of poorly paced. It was just really kind of a slow way to kind of have the climactic finale of the film.
Who else do you love to talk about in this movie?
We should mention Paul Williams popping up in this, if for no other reason than to mention Paul Williams.
Yeah.
It's always nice to see him, even if he is an orangutan.
It's funny. Paul Williams of everybody, maybe Roddy McDowall, but Paul Williams of everybody really looked the part.
He did. Oh, man. So funny.
Right? Like, yeah. I don't know. I just feel like I could watch this and the Brady Bunch Variety Hour, and I'd pretty much looking at the same guy.
I can't help but think of the Muppets when I see all these apes, and then Paul Williams is popping in.
That's right. He was Little Enos Burdett, Smokey and the Bandit.
Oh, did you spot John Landis in here?
No, I was very surprised to see him credited as Jake's friend in this movie. Did you catch him?
I didn't, but I went to the planetoftheapes.wikia.com and looked him up, and I was like, oh, yeah, sure enough. There he is.
There he was.
So interesting.
I still don't think I could pick him out. Although now I know who Jake, I can see Jake. I know where Jake will be when I don't ever watch this movie again.
Right. Yeah. He's in the, he's a human living in the village when you can see him when he's watching Aldo as he rides into town, and later while his friend Jake is collecting wood, he gives a ride to a young chimp before both of them are taken by Aldo's guerrilla soldiers and locked in the corral.
What about Colleen Camp?
And I didn't even recognize her.
Yeah. This was her first feature. And she went on after this to do, 140 other things. I think the only thing we've talked about with her is Die Hard with a Vengeance. She was another one of the cops, Connie Kowalski, on NYPD. Fantastic. It was really, really fun seeing that she was in this, even though I had no idea where she was.
Well, and she's obviously hanging out quite a bit with Lisa. Like, we see her because she's the one she's talking to, and she's like
right.
telling her that Cornelius is going to die and everything. And it's funny. I don't think I even put two and two together that it was Colleen Camp.
Sequels and remakes, Andy. Oh, this is the end of our road, sadly, with the Apes for now.
It is. Well, probably forever.
Oh.
Well, we talked about Rise on the film board. We never talked about War, and like I said, I revisited Burton's 2001 remake and don't feel the need to revisit that one again.
Well, I'm surprised about that, Andy, because if there's anything I know about you, it's that you are, at your core, a very serious completionist.
There's some truth to that.
I have a real hard time, real hard time imagining that you're going to be able to let this go. This is like dun da da da.
Oh, you're turning me into Roger Rabbit.
I'm just thinking at some point we're going to find a way to do those last movies. They must be represented.
It's entirely possible that it will happen. And here's the thing. I mean, this franchise was so popular that, this spun off a TV series, The Planet of the Apes, that I think it started running very shortly right after this. And I think, it's kind of sad because Arthur Jacobs, who had been helming these as the producer over at Fox, he died. This A Battle for the Planet of the Apes was his second to last film. And I think that he had been trying to get the TV show off the ground for a while, but and then just as it was happening, ended up dying shortly after, I think very shortly after this film was released in theaters. And it was released the fall of '74. It had a short run, and but not. It was still popular, which led to the animated series. And that was Return to the Planet of the Apes, which was, I remember that, thinking back, that may actually have been my entry point for this world. I feel like I might have seen some of those. The animated show.
Really?
Yeah. It's entirely possible in the mid 70s. It was not very long. I think they only did one season, maybe.
Wow.
Yeah, very small.
I don't think I've ever seen a single episode.
Yeah, and then of course it went into and it spawned a ton of merchandising. I mean, there was a lot of merchandise that you could buy for the Apes. It was very popular, and of course then it they wanted to relaunch the franchise. This was one of Fox's most popular franchises that they had. They really wanted to relaunch it, and they never could. It was in development hell forever. Through the 80s and the 90s until, like we said, Tim Burton finally did the 2001 remake, which is a travesty. But it's funny when you look at the people who were tied on, like Oliver Stone, who brought in Terry Hayes to write it, and Arnold Schwarzenegger was going to be on in the film with Philip Noyce directing it at one point. I love picturing these variations of the film. It'd be so interesting to see what some of these other people would have done. I don't know if I would have liked any of those, though.
Most important, Andy, does this film make it a straight pentathlon of non-award-winning movies on this show?
You know what, Pete? I can finally say that another of the films has been nominated for an award.
What?
Can you believe it? Of all the films, Pete, not Escape, not Conquest, it's Battle. Battle for the Planet of the Apes.
That is cosmically crushing.
I tell you, it gets nominated for Golden Scroll Award by the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Films for Best Science Fiction Film. It did lose to Soylent Green, and but I have to read the other nominees because this is a fantastic list. And I feel like one of these days we're going to have to do a series of these films because it's just so much fun. First of all, the sequel to The Blob, it's Beware the Blob. We also have Woody Allen's Sleeper. We have which I can only imagine is about a mutant snake or something. We have The Day of the Dolphin, The Neptune Factor, and of course, Westworld.
Oh, Andy, I want to work that in. Something awful. I want to do all of those movies.
I want to watch.
But I don't think yes, totally. I don't think we should be allowed to flick chart them. I think that would be off the list.
This is what IMDb says about A college student becomes lab assistant to a scientist who's working on a serum that can transform humans into snakes.
Oh, dear. What's great about that is that was essentially the plot of Spider-Man 2.
Oh, my.
How'd it do at the box office?
Well, according to varying reports, Thompson either got the same amount or a tiny bit more to make this film, $1.8 million, or $9.75 million in today's dollars. No matter how you slice it, it was the cheapest of the films. Looking at them all in today's dollars, they went from $40.1 million down to $18.6, then $14.9, then $9.8, and finally $9.75. But like the others, it still made money for Fox. The movie was released June 15th, 1973, opposite Pam Grier's Coffee. It went on to make $8.8 million at the box office, or $47.9 million in today's dollars. That leaves the fifth Apes film with an adjusted profit per finished minute of $410,556. Based on the budget drops, the best return on Fox's investment of all the films actually ended up being Beneath the Planet of the Apes, making a little more than 6 times its budget back. Then the original film at 5.76 times its budget, followed by Conquest, then Escape, and Battle, which really, it just ended up at the bottom of the barrel on all accounts. But it was a profitable series for the studio, and obviously one they were anxious to return to in one form or another.
Now, you have been talking about the fact that Fox was in deep financial trouble throughout the entire series, and yet you haven't mentioned it once here. Does that mean that Fox was starting to come out of their difficulties?
I think they were. I didn't find any. I kept looking. I couldn't find anything specific about when they started. I mean, I think they had been pulling themselves out of that bit by bit. But I also think as they were working on this franchise, they were realizing, hey, if we do a sequel and do it for less money, we'll still make a chunk of money back. This was kind of the beginning of that mentality of the sequels and that whole sequelitis. And they're like, hey, let's put less money in. We'll still make money. People are still going to come. And, they proved successful 4 times after that original one. So I can't fault them for keeping it cheap.
Andy, on that note, keeping it cheap, I think it's time for us to rank it.
Oh, let's do it.
Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel. You'll see all of the movies we've talked about on this very show. And then, if you so choose, you can swipe over in your show notes, tap the word Flickchart, and that'll take you straight to this movie, where you can add it to your list and see how it stacks up against ours.
First up, no surprise, again, Battle for the Planet of the Apes, or Numi, the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, please, Andy.
Same for me. Battle for the Planet of the Apes, or The Adventures of Baron Munchausen. Munchausen for me.
Yeah, Munchausen for me, too.
Battle for the Planet of the Apes, or Giant. I know you loved Giant, Pete.
I am going to choose Giant.
I am, too. Battle for the Planet of the Apes, or 2010.
2010.
I am going to pick Battle here.
Are you kidding me?
No, I don't. It's a franchise I love, and it's something that I still will watch, even though I will gripe about it. 2010 was just a huge, huge disappointment for me in every way, shape, and form. So
the 2001-2010 series clearly poisoned this show. I will go to the mat on this one.
All right, let's do it.
1, 2, 3. Scissors. Rock. Scissors.
Battle for the Planet of the Apes, or The Dead Zone. I will go with The Dead Zone. Battle for the Planet of the Apes, or The Danish Girl.
The Danish Girl.
Battle for the Planet of the Apes.
Oh, Andy, to be so wrong right in a row. Here we go.
It's what I would watch more. I would agree that The Danish Girl may have better performances, that has some more strengths, but I would still watch Battle first, even though I'm going to bitch about it. Here we go.
All right.
1, 2, 3.
Rock. You've been practicing.
Battle for the Planet of the... I told you, I've been going to RPS school. Battle for the Planet of the Apes, or The Crazies. Both 1973.
I'd do The Crazies.
I would do The Crazies because I don't remember it that well.
That may be why I'm enthusiastic for it.
I may retract that.
It's down there now. We're in the bottom of the well here.
Battle for the Planet of the Apes or The Blob.
Oh, The Blob. I do remember The Blob.
Yeah, I'll say The Blob. Battle for the Planet of the Apes or Fritz Lang's Manhunt. I'm going to go with Manhunt.
Manhunt, yeah.
Well, that lands Battle for the Planet of the Apes at 339 on our chart. 339 out of 368. I would say that's definitely the lowest of the Apes films that we've ranked here. So
yeah,
way down
deservedly so.
Looking at our flick chart, it looks like it goes Planet of the Apes, Conquest, Escape, Beneath, Battle. How do you feel about that?
Fine. For me, my favorite one, I think after all is said and done, was Escape. And because of the series nature of it, going Escape to Conquest I found really rewarding. I liked that. I, in hindsight, struggle even more with the Heston factor, but I can't deny the classic nature of the original movie. So it's all close enough. It's all close enough. I really feel like Beneath is in the right place, and Battle is absolutely in the right place.
Yeah, yeah.
I enjoyed talking about this series, Andy. I think it was a great idea, and I'm so glad it fell within our 1968 kickoff. Clearly, these movies have come a long way, but it was really great to watch them back to back. I think that was, for me at least, it was rewarding. It is.
It's a fun franchise, and yes, it can take some adapting to, because the style, the storytelling, it's weak to a certain extent, but I think there are a lot of strengths, and certainly as somebody who grew up with them, it's something that is close to my heart, even when it is something like this last film that we've looked at. But I'm excited with what Fox has been doing with them, and I'm curious to see if they're going to keep going.
So where does this put you on your star ranking at letterboxd.com/thenextreel?
I struggle with this one. I think I ranked it higher last time I watched it. I think I gave it a 3-star. I think I probably would go 2 now, but it's 2-star and a like.
Really?
Yeah. There's something about the franchise that I still really enjoy. So even with my problems that I have, I still find it very watchable.
I think that I can agree with the 2-star. I'm not going to give it a like, and that's because I feel comfortable giving the whole series a like. I would give Planet of the Apes a nice, strong, sturdy heart, but I'm not. I just don't need to watch this one again.
I don't know. You swayed me. I think that's what I'm really thinking here. Is I just love the franchise so much that I think I want to give it a like. But when I really think about this film by itself, I think it's fair to say that I don't have to give it the like on this one.
All right, I call that a victory. Thank you. Yeah. All right. So where do we go from here?
This is exciting. We're going to be, our next series is actually not a franchise. We're just looking at crime films from 1968. So we've got 4 films that we'll be covering. We're going to look at Peter Bogdanovich's Targets. We're going to be looking at Coogan's Bluff. We're going to be, which is directed by Don Siegel, I believe. And then we're going to be looking at The Detective with Frank Sinatra. And we're going to be ending on the crazy Italian Danger Diabolic.
I'm very excited for that one, Danger in particular, although all of these seem great to me. I can't wait.
I haven't seen any of them. So
it's very exciting. It's very exciting.
It will be a fun series to jump into.
Yeah.
I think rarely do we have a series of films that we haven't seen at all. So.
Yeah. Perfect.
Well, if you want to hear more of us, but you can't wait until next week's show, you can support us over on patreon.com/thenextreel and get access to our exclusive members-only weekend show, The Saturday Matinee. We talk about movie news and new trailers, plus we go head-to-head in our weekly challenge in which we put together lists of movies related in some way to the movie we're discussing that week. There are all sorts of other goodies too if you support us at different levels, so just head on over to patreon.com/thenextreel.
You can learn more about us at thenextreel.com, subscribe to the show for free in your favorite podcast app, or follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at The Next Reel. And if you want to get a head start and aren't quite ready to dive into patreon.com/thenextreel, you can join our Discord, or the TNR community over on Discord, for free right now, and jump in to the conversation with a ton of fantastic movie lovers who are just sitting there talking about movies, waiting for you. Look for the link in the show notes.
The Next Reel couldn't happen without the hard work of Steven Smart running Instagram, Ben Lott running all things on Twitter, and thanks to Eli Catlin, who graciously allows us to use his song Ragtime Instrumental as the theme to the show. You can find out more about Eli on his SoundCloud page.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Amazon giveth, Andy.
As Amazon always doeth.
Oh, people liked this movie more than I expected.
Yes, they do.
The average rating was a 4-star on this movie, Andy.
Yeah.
We were struggling to hit half that.
I find that ratings mostly favor the positive.
Well, in this case, I went with a 1-star. What'd you end up doing?
I did a 5.
Oh, okay. Well, would you like to fall or climb today?
Your choice.
I think I will start.
Go for it.
As long as you're offering. Shathis has this to say with a 1 star. In this corner, we have some clips from the TV series. And in the other corner of a moderately sized field, we have some more clips. It's basically about 24 extras in total, driving a couple of Jeeps and a school bus. The battle is ludicrous at best. See if you can spot the same extras getting killed over and over again. Oh, the highlight? It's a treehouse getting blown up. And you know it's a highlight because they show it being blown up several times during the battle. Seriously, at least 5 times the treehouse goes boom. The humans are bad shots and must have been drunk when they put on their own makeup. Hilariously bad. Treehouse goes boom.
As a counterpoint, I think there were more than one treehouse.
You do?
I think they had
lost
a number
more
of
than
them.
one treehouse. All right.
I think so. Yeah.
Noted for the record.
Well, I have a 5-star by a surprised and not as much reviewer. That's their name. Who reviewed this on VHS tape on April 24th, 2006. Glad to see VHS is still alive and well.
I was thinking it was making a comeback, but 2006, I stand corrected.
For this installment, we do go both forwards and backwards, and then forwards and backwards, and again through time. Yes, I was taken away more immediately by the second time that I saw Battle than I was the first, and this even made Planet of the Apes: The Forbidden Zone at Malibu Graphics their best publication courtesy of me for the little or not known peacetime of the humans and apes, of which this film had both begun and ended with, and then as a result the people at Malibu Graphics were just as annoyed by me as they were glad to have me there for them. They invited comment and critique, and got from me more than what they bargained for as a result, and along with this for not doing their own homework. But still, check out the Zpota website for damn the continuity all to hell, as it agrees with someone's response of what continuity. Also, please check out the IMDb sites for this movie as others too.
What the hell was that? What was that?
I think there's Hi.
What was that? What did you just do to me? Oh, God.
I don't know if there's anything else that needs to be said after that.
Thanks, Amazon.
Yeah.
You gotta check that out for damn the continuity all the hell. It is hard to believe that we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
So many great movies, so many great conversations. But it's a lot of work. Producing this show week after week does require a lot behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our Originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
We had some great films in Season 8 that started their lives as books or plays, and you can find all of them on our Originals page at thenextreel.com/originals.
That's the site where listeners can find links to purchase all the source material behind the adapted films we've covered, from Season 1 up through our current season.
For part of Season 8, we had a series celebrating the 50th anniversary of films from 1968.
We talked about 2001 and 2010 for our Odyssey series, both adapted from Arthur C. Clarke's novels. Man, the second one was so much better than the first, right?
Don't you even get me started. Need I bring up Under the Cherry Moon again?
Yes, also so much better.
Wait, no, that's not what I...
Planet of the Apes kicked off its series based on the novel by Pierre Boulet.
We covered Danger Diabolic and The Detective, adapted from novels for our 1968 crime films.
Wait, wasn't that The Detective the prequel to Die Hard?
They were both written by Roderick Thorpe, and yes, it's the same character in the books.
I can't believe they even asked Sinatra if he'd be in Die Hard. That would have been weird.
Once Upon a Time in America was part of our Leone Once Upon a Time trilogy, adapted from Harry Gray's novel.
And we looked at 1968 Best Picture nominees The Lion in Winter, Rachel, Romeo and Juliet, and Oliver!
We also had an Ingrid Bergman series with adaptations like Spellbound, For Whom the Bell Tolls, Murder on the Orient Express, and Gaslight.
We haven't talked about Gaslight.
Stop gaslighting me!
Dive deeper into these books and more adapted films at thenextreel.com/originals. Every purchase supports the podcast.
Get the full list of adaptations that we've covered on all the Next Reel family of podcasts and start your next read today at thenextreel.com/originals.